Tom Fitton, thanks for being with us here on the Howie Carr Show.
Hey, Howie, good to be with you again. Thank you.
So, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give this this report today? 476 pages for a grade.
Oh, I give it a 6.
Yeah, I mean,
I
you know, it's.
Go
ahead.
Yeah, your listeners should know that IG reports are almost always underwhelming. They tend to be exposés and cover-ups at the same time. So I encourage your listeners to read the full report. It's accessible to the layman, and they'll see all sorts of evidence of criminal and other misconduct. And, of course, the IG punts on pretty much all of that, but it presents a devastating portrait of a FBI that was out to get to President Trump, and the IG pretends politics wasn't part of it, but obviously regular people are going to conclude otherwise.
Yeah, it says here that the FBI has an obligation under the law to be, quote unquote, scrupulously accurate. Think about that, scrupulously accurate. Yet at the same time, he says, and again, people are saying this is a whitewash and all this, they omitted information. They failed to correct. They made statements inconsistent with factual statements. They failed to share inconsistencies. Their conclusions were contradicted key assertions. The facts contradicted key assertions. I mean, that's pretty damning stuff, and that's just in the first the first few pages of the report.
That's right, and you have to remember that all of that is tied to the spying on President Trump. Now, they're talking about the Carter Page FISA warrants there, but ultimately that was all directed at getting at President Trump and whether his campaign and he was colluding with the Russians. And they had no good faith basis to initiate the investigation. The IG can pretend otherwise, but the facts don't suggest it. And you can always find a bureaucrat in the FBI to have a pretextual reason for this outrageous targeting of a presidential candidate and then President Trump. And you can see they never really had a good faith reason to do it. And despite knowing and finding that nothing was panning out, it was so bad that they had to start distorting the evidence to the FISA warrant courts. They continued to harass the president, not only into his administration, but well into it through the Mueller investigation. Mueller knew all about this back almost a year plus ago before he finalized his report. This was such an harassment of the president. He's a crime victim, Howie. There's no doubt about it. You read this report, he's a crime victim. There's at least one criminal referral, so it's not a complete loss. But the facts evidence a massive criminal conspiracy against the president for political reasons.
But, I mean, maybe this is a pattern in IG reports. I'm not that familiar with them except for these three that Horowitz has written. But, they throw this guy, this Kleinsmith, the lawyer. I mean, he seems like he's the patsy. Because specifically, Horowitz says that Rosenstein, Yates, and Bionte did not have accurate or complete information at the time they approved the applications. So they're basically saying that they like Sergeant Schultz, they knew nothing when they were signing these things. I mean, since when is that a legitimate excuse?
Well, it especially is illegitimate when you look at the report, because we did get the FISA warrant applications, Howie, and you read them, they're obviously absurd. You read the dossier, it's obviously absurd. You can tell that in the FISA warrant applications they were withholding information that the Clinton campaign paid for this dossier. They all knew that at the senior level, or they should have been asking questions about it. And the IG doesn't give them a pass in that regard. The question, he gives them a little bit of an out, but he does recognize they're all responsible for this breakdown, and that's a charitable way of putting it. I just don't understand how you can have 35 or 17, depending on how you count, all sorts of errors and omissions, and just chalk that up to bureaucratic snafus and mismanagement. No. The easy explanation is they were out to get Trump, and the truth was not going to get in their way.
Yeah, and they, the deep state hangs its hat on the fact that there was a vague reference in a footnote for one of these FISA applications saying some of this information may have come from a rival campaign. Well, gee, it's the general campaign is underway. What is this rival campaign stuff? Is it Jill Stein's campaign? Is it the Libertarian campaign? No, of course not. They're just trying to cover it up.
Yeah, I mean, you could read that to make it seem like it was a Republican.
Yeah.
When in fact it was Hillary Clinton who was being supported at the time by President Obama. Remember, President Obama knew about this dossier as well, and this is why Durham and a Barr are right to highlight the fact that there are issues with this dossier or with this IG report. They have issues with the conclusions of this IG report, that it was that this whole thing was legit, the way it was opened and everything, and there was only failures in its execution. No, that's not the reality. They all knew it was bunk, that the president was colluding with the Russians, and they didn't care, and they didn't want any information to the contrary to be told to the courts that would have stopped their spy operation against the president. His civil rights were violated. And as we point out, there's at least one crook who potentially could be prosecuted over this. And if I were the president, given the way Wray has kind of protected his agency and just the corruption endemic in the Justice Department, I'd appoint a special counsel outside those agencies to investigate this issue criminally.
How about on page 77, the CIA and the FBI briefed Obama in July or August of 2016 regarding Russia and Trump associates. And I said this to Joe DeGenova last hour. I mean, can you imagine that? The President of the United States, this apparently means he was being briefed on George Papadopoulos and Carter Page. And, you know, Nixon was going to be removed from office for, talking about the Watergate burglary after it happened. I mean, how bad is this, the president of the United States.
The Trump campaign was getting was part of the FBI spy operation. They were using briefings allowed by the Trump campaign in good faith, thinking they're getting briefed. In fact, the FBI people were going in there to use those briefings as a technique to investigate them. What an abuse! Nixon is a piker compared to the Obama gang spying on Trump here.
Yeah. And Horowitz keeps saying that they had a predication. Now that's the new word, predication. But what was the predicate? What was it?
They had a pretext. It was a pretext created by a friendly intelligence source that came up with the absurd notion that somehow because George Papadopoulos may have been told or said something about Clinton emails, therefore we're going to spy on the Trumps, the Trump operation. It's completely absurd. And as Attorney General Barr says, it was pretty darn thin information to take this extraordinary step, and he's absolutely right. And when you come right down to it, it was politicized, and because it was politicized, it was criminal. If the IG doesn't want to say that, that's no surprise, because that's what IGs do in my experience.
What about Stefan Halper? This is the guy who basically lured Carter Page with the Ataturk, this mysterious honeypot, to come to the UK. Now it turns out he was paid $411,000 by the Pentagon in 2016. $411,000.
It was all hands on deck, Howie. It was all hands on deck when it came to targeting Trump. You had the State Department involved, you had the CIA involved, you had the Defense Department involved, you had the FBI involved, you had the DOJ involved, you had the NSA involved, you had foreign governments involved. This was a massive operation. And so, of course, what are they trying to do? Impeach Trump for asking questions about Ukraine and its involvement in this scam against him.
Wow. What's next? How soon do you think John Durham will act, the U.S. Attorney from Connecticut?
I don't know. He hasn't done anything I can see of note yet. He's doing an administrative review or a criminal investigation. I don't know. We all know what the indicia of a serious criminal investigation are, and I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, that's what I asked Joe DeGenova. I said, when are the target letters going out? That's what I want to know. I want to see.
Well, we can hope, but I just don't see when you look at the Mueller operation, the special counsel investigation, however abusive that was, you kind of see what a real serious criminal investigation looks like. You got grand juries and witnesses and lawyers yelling and screaming. There's no evidence that's taking place here. Maybe it's taking place all in secret, but
Barr keeps Barr keeps going back to Italy. I don't think this is prime tourist season in Tuscany or Rome. I mean, he must be doing something over there. I hope so.
Hope. But that's why Judicial Watch does the work we do, because we just don't rely on the Justice Department to do the right thing in the end. We can hope, but we're going to keep our powder dry and do our own work.
You do a great job, as I always tell you, Tom. Where can people go if they want to learn more about Judicial Watch?
To our website at judicialwatch.org, and we're on Facebook and Twitter and everywhere. And I'm at Tom Fitton as well.
Thank you, Tom Fitton, for joining us here on the Howie Carr Show. I appreciate it. I'm Howie Carr.